All right, for Bio 120, this is our second field trip. So we are on the Poulsbo campus. Behind the main building, there's a trail that runs through the woods. I've marked it out front, in the front of the trail with these cones. Hopefully they will stay here. But this is technically like where the fire lane is. Back behind the building. Here's the main building over here, back behind it. So you can see the trail access goes in through here and it winds around back out to the other end of the building. And so I'm going to mark several plants along this trail. If you want to come out and visit this trail to study the plants, you may do that, or you can study the video as well. So this first tree should be a review of one that we looked at last week. We talked about this as the Western Red Cedar. So you can see its small scale-like leaves. This is a gymnosperm, remember, a conifer, although again, this particular one that I have found doesn't have cones on it at the moment. Eventually we will find one with cones to show you. So Thuya plicata, remember, is the scientific name. Western red cedar, Thuya plicata. And the family for this one is the Cupressaceae family. So it's not one of the ones that's in the Pinaceae family, but the Cupressaceae family. Okay, the next one you can see that I've marked here is another review one. This is our red alder. You can see its cone-like fruits. These are technically fruits. This is a flowering plant, not a conifer. But it has these little cone-like structures and deciduous leaves that are toothed along the margin, actually double toothed. So serrate, remember that term? You can see it's pinnate veined, and the leaves are alternately arranged on the stem. So darker green on one side, a little bit paler underneath. So this is red alder. Scientific name is Ulmus rubra. Rubra means red. Ulmus rubra. And the family is the Betulaceae family, the birch family. Okay, this is a new one that we're gonna look at this week. This is a cherry, not in bloom at the moment. And it's probably escaped from cultivation. It's not one of the wild cherries. But this one way you can identify the cherries is frequently by the bark. I can't get in to show you the bark, but there's another one further on. I'll show you a peek at that bark better later on. And also, frequently in the cherries, there's an interesting glandular structure at the base of the leaves, right on the petioles, so right here, or sometimes right on the back of the leaf. There's these interesting little glands that are kind of showing up there. And so that is a good clue that you're looking at the genus of cherries, which is Prunus, P-R-U-N-U-S, Prunus. And the family is Rosaceae family. And again, this is one of the probably escaped from cultivation, so not a wild cherry. I think I have a wild one. We'll show you in a minute. You can see the leaves are kind of elliptic to oblong, maybe ovate. They kind of vary in shape. Some of them are a little bit more obovate even, but they are serrate, so teeth on the margin, pinnate veined, alternate arrangement on the stem. Again, the genus Prunus and the family Rosaceae. All right, the next one I have here is another new one. Actually, I meant to show it in last week's video, and I don't think I did. So this is our common blackberry, or Himalayan blackberry. It's not native in our area, but it's blooming right now. You can see its flower. It has 5 petals, many stamens. That's characteristic of the rose family. And then it's going to make its blackberry fruit, which I don't see very many developing yet. You can notice the leaves are a palmately compound leaf. or pretty close to palmately compound. So it's got 5 leaflets. Only one really has that extra rachis extending from the point of attachment. So this is all one leaf. These are 5 leaflets of a compound leaf. The leaves are alternately arranged, so one at a node on the stem. And the scientific name rubus, R-U-B-U-S, discolor, D-I-S-C-O-L-O-R, is the older name. It's been changed to Armeniacus, which means Armenian, because they're really from Armenia, not actually from Himalaya. Long story. So Armeniacus, A-R-M-E-N-I-A-C-U-S. Depending on which book you look in, you might find one of those names. Rubus discolor, Rubus armeniacus, and the family Rosaceae. All right, here's another new one for us, and it's also a type of blackberry, really, although we call it thimbleberry. But you notice it also has a palmate leaf, although not compound. Also alternate arrangement on the stem. And if you touch this leaf, it is very pubescent, very soft pubescent. So it's got hairs. Some people like to call this nature's toilet paper. So if you're hiking in the woods and you need some supplies, this is a good one to look for. This large palmate leaf sort of looks like a maple leaf with its lobes, palmately lobed, and very soft and fuzzy, and will not give you an irritation like some other kinds of plants might. And also there's some of its fruits over here, and this is where it gets its name thimbleberry from. So this is its blackberry type fruit, although it stays red, not black. And it's more flattened than the blackberry you might be familiar with, the kind we buy in the store, for example. So it's more thimble shaped. It looks like it would fit on the tip of your thumb, like a thimble if you were sewing. So thimbleberry. And it's Rubus parviflorus, which is a misnomer because parva means small. Parviflorus, it's not really a small leafed plant, but actually has a fairly large leaf. So Rubus parviflorus in the Rosaceae family, thimbleberry. All right, here's another review one that we saw last week. This is our sword fern, Poulsbo munitum, in the Dryopteridaceae family. So remember, it has its fern-like leaf or frond, which is compound. This is all one leaf. It has spores on the back sides of the leaves, or leaflets. So sword fern. It can get quite large, you see. Poulsbo munitum. Another review one here. This is our salal, Gaultheria chalon. So it has these thick, coriaceous, evergreen leaves. And you can see it's making its berries. It's going to make purple berries. They're not purple yet. The flowers have passed on this one. We saw a look at the flowers last time. The leaves are alternately arranged, pinnately veined. Gaultheria chalon in the Ericaceae family, which is the blueberry family. Salal. All right, here's a new one, which is also in the blueberry family, although this one is one of the huckleberries, the evergreen huckleberry. So you can see it has those thick evergreen leaves, but small. These are fairly small leaves. Also toothed on the margin, alternately arranged. And very ovate shape, so widest at the base of the leaf and then coming up to the tip there as it narrows down. So this is Vaccinium, V-A-C-C-I-N-I-U-M, ovatum, referring to that leaf shape, O-V-A-T-U-M, the evergreen huckleberry, also in the Ericaceae family, E-R-I-C-A-C-E-A-E. Evergreen huckleberry is making some of its berries here. They're not ripe yet, but they are good to eat once they are ripe. They turn a purpley black. All right, here's another one of our huckleberries, which are really in the blueberry group. Vaccinium parvifolius, parviflorus, actually, parviflorus, I think, on this one. I'll have to make sure and double check. This is a red huckleberry, so you can see the red berries. It has its fruits on it. They're edible. It's kind of, it can be a little bit sour tasting to some people, but you can eat them. But you see the leaves are kind of small, on the smaller side, and not evergreen. These are deciduous leaves, very thin, usually very kind of a lightish green color, not very dark green. And the stems even are green. It's hard to get in the picture here, but usually the stems are green rather than having a brownish bark until you get further back on the stem, then it becomes brown. So right up here at the tip, green stems, thin green leaves, and red berries, and growing in this very shrubby, bushy habitat. You see many stems coming from the base, forming this bush. So this is Vaccinium parviflorus, red huckleberry in the Ericaceae family, the blueberry family. Right, here's another new one that we will look at. It's not native here, it's escaped into some of the woods and areas around here. The birds spread these red berries around when they're ripe. But this is holly, Ilex opaca. Ilex is I-L-E-X. Opaca, O-P-A-C-A. Opaca refers to this sort of glossy, shiny, thick, leathery leaf that the hollies have. And the leaves are, of course, very spiny on the margin. They're alternately arranged on the stem. And these plants are dioecious, so they're separate male and female plants. So I don't see any berries on this one right now. Possibly it's a male, or possibly it just didn't make good berries. I'll have to investigate a little closer to see. But Ilex opaca, the family is the Aquifoliaceae family, A-Q-U-I-F-O-L-I-A-C-E-A-E. Aquifoliaceae. Right, here's another new one for today. This one is our wild cherry, or called bitter cherry or choke cherry. So it's also in the Prunus, the genus Prunus, like the cherries. And this one does have a few small fruits on it. There's one right there. So they're not very large and tasty to eat, although birds do eat them. And this one does not have the significant glands. It does have some very tiny glands. They're not nearly as big as on the escaped from cultivation type cherries, but you see just a couple of glands there at the base of the leaf. So this is also in the genus Prunus. The leaves are very finely serrate or barely serrate. Genus Prunus, and the species Emarginata, E-M-A-R-G-I-N-A-T-A, Prunus emarginata, the family Rosaceae. Bitter cherry or wild cherry. Here you can see the characteristics of the cherry tree bark. It frequently has these horizontal looking lines across it, and all of these little pores, which are called lenticels, which are letting air enter into the trunk of the tree. So they're for gas exchange. But cherry trees, this is always a giveaway if you can see this striking pattern of the bark. Okay, here's another one that we looked at last week, so we can review that. Remember these short needles. This is our Douglas fir, and on the ground I can confirm that by looking for cones that have those little mouse feet bracts sticking out of the cone. So these needle leaves and the cone of the Douglas fir. Remember the scientific name Pseudotsuga menziesii, the family Pinaceae. And right next to it is one of our others from last week, so you can compare. It's another one of our needle-leaved trees, but the needles are shorter, and this one has needles of 2 lengths. Some of them are a little longer than others, so there's some short ones and some longer ones. So this one is our western hemlock, Tsuga heterophylla. Heterophylla means two types of leaves, and also in the family Pinaceae, and it has much smaller cones that you can find on the ground without those bracts. So western hemlock. Here's a good look at that bark of the western red cedar, the Thuya plicata. So you can see this reddish color, peeling bark. It peels in these very long strips, and Native Americans would peel that off and use that for many types of fibers and even clothes. Right, here's another plant common in our area. This is our Oregon grape, or dull Oregon grape. This one has a compound leaf. So all of this that you see here is one leaf. These are the leaflets. And we have 2 species in this area that are very similar in this genus. This one is the dull Oregon grape that has larger leaves and more leaflets, 9 to 19 or 21 even, I've counted leaflets on these compound leaves. But notice they're also spiny on the margins like holly. So don't get it confused with holly. These are compound leaves. Holly is a simple leaf. So 9 to 19 leaflets. This one is Mahonia, M-A-H-O-N-I-A, nervosa, N-E-R-V-O-S-A, and the family is the Berberidaceae family, B-E-R-B-E-R-I-D-A-C-E-A-E. We'll see the other one next time, I think, and be able to compare them. But this is the dull Oregon grape. It would make a dark purple berry in a cluster at the top of the plant, but this one doesn't have that. Hopefully we'll find some to look at eventually. They're not really grapes. They're just called grapes because they're purpley like grapes in a cluster. Mahonia nervosa. All right, down here on the ground is our next one. This is our trailing blackberry. Called trailing because it's down here on the ground. Also sometimes called bearberry, which is what its scientific name comes from. So this is Rubus in the blackberry group, blackberry genus, Rubus ursinus, U-R-S-I-N-U-S. Ursinus means bear, so bearberry or trailing blackberry. Also in the Rosaceae family. You can see it also has a compound leaf, a trifoliate leaf, so just 3 leaflets. 2 at the bottom are smaller, 1 at the tip is bigger. They are toothed. The whole leaf is alternate on the stem. Remember, this is 1 leaf, so 1 leaf at a node. And these don't have fruits at the moment, but they are very tasty when you find them. And this is a native one, native blackberry. Right, here's our next one. This is our cascara tree. The leaves can look a little bit like alder, but they are more obovate than alder leaves, and they're much more finely toothed, or even just barely toothed. They can be entire as well, with no teeth. Whereas alder leaves are more ovate, wider at the base. This is more obovate, wider toward the tip. And the tip of alder is going to be more acute to acuminate, whereas the tip of cascara can be more rounded or even emarginate, where it forms a little dip in at the tip of the leaf. So this is cascara. The scientific name is rhamnus, R-H-A-M-N-U-S. Persiana, P-U-R-S-H-I-A-N-A, rhamnus persiana. And the family is the Rhamnaceae, R-H-A-M-N-A-C-E-A-E. It does make a sort of a dark bluish black berry. I don't see any on this tree. And it is edible, I believe. All right, here's our next plant. We're going to see more of this one next time. There's just one little guy here that I found. This is our red elderberry. It also has compound leaves, which are opposite. You don't see opposite compound leaves very often, so this is a big clue to identifying this plant. Opposite compound leaves. So each of these are leaflets. It is odd compound, so it has 2, 4, 6, 7, an odd number. The leaflets are toothed on the margin, and it would produce a flower and fruits. The fruits turn into red berries, a cluster of red berries up at the tip, but we don't see it on this one. We'll see some more next week, I do think. The scientific name, Sambucus, S-A-M-B-U-C-U-S, racemosa, R-A-C-E-M-O-S-A, racemosa. And the family is the Caprifoliaceae, C-A-P-R-I-F-O-L-I-A-C-E-A-E, Caprifoliaceae. So this compound, opposite leaves, Sambucus racemosa, red elderberry. All right, here's another one of our native blackberry types, although this one we call salmonberry. And one of the characteristics of salmonberry, again, that compound leaf like all the blackberries have, but these bottom two leaflets frequently look like butterfly. They make a butterfly. So if you can find that butterfly pattern, that is a good way to identify salmonberry. And then the third leaflet doesn't have that extra little lobe that makes the butterfly. So if you just look at those bottom two, it makes the butterfly. Salmonberry. This one doesn't have fruits on it at the moment, but it would produce, they're a little bit past, it would produce that sort of salmon-y, pinkish color. Berries that are very tasty to eat. It also, of course, is thorny. Not as thorny as the other blackberries, but has this sort of arching cane type of growth usually. It can get quite tall. It's over my head here. And it can produce these thickets of just tons of salmonberry from these canes of growth. So the scientific name is Rubus spectabilis, S-P-E-C-T-A-B-I-L-I-S, the spectacular salmonberry. Rubus spectabilis, also in the Rosaceae family. All right, here's our next one. This one also has compound leaves, so that's one leaf with its leaflets being in an odd number again. And these are alternate, although they're very tightly close together, so it's hard to tell. These are not opposite, though, like the red elderberry, which is what people will tend to get it confused with, although these leaflets are much smaller than the red elderberry. Trying to get my hand in there, but I can't right now for comparison. So smaller leaflets, smaller leaf, and alternate rather than opposite. This is our mountain ash, Sorbus, S-O-R-B-U-S, sitchensis, S-I-T-C-H-E-N-S-I-S, Sorbus sitchensis, and it would produce a red cluster of berries also, kind of similar to the red elderberry, but with this different leaf, smaller leaflets, and alternate, not opposite. So mountain ash, Sorbus sitchensis, Rosaceae family. All right, reviewing this one that we saw last week. See if you can identify it. The flowers have passed already, but these are the fruits, capsules that are developing. This evergreen leaf, which is many times rolled or revolute, although so this one is a little bit revolute. This one's pretty flat. But this is our rhododendron, Pacific rhododendron, macrophyllum, in the Ericaceae family. So those thicker evergreen leaves, very elliptical, no teeth on the margin, they're entire, they're alternate, and producing that capsule fruit. All right, here's another new one. This is a different fern. You can probably tell it's a fern. It has this fern type leaf, although it's a much larger leaf than our sword fern and much more divided. So the sword fern is just once pinnate. This one can get up to about 4 times pinnate, and it can have a very large, all of this is one leaf that we're looking at here, very large frond. So this is bracken fern, B-R-A-C-K-E-N, bracken fern. It's one of the kinds of ferns that you'll sometimes see in the drier areas or along roadsides and things like that, whereas most ferns are generally in wetter areas or in the shady forest. But bracken fern can take drier, sunnier areas. And it can grow quite large. It can be 4 feet tall even. So this one isn't the biggest that you might find, but much more highly divided. And when you turn it over, you won't see the spores on the back of the leaf because they are hiding. They are tucked up under the margin of the leaflet. So it's rolled over just a little bit, that margin, and the spores are under that rolled margin of the leaf. So this is bracken fern, Pteridium, P-T-E-R-I-D-I-U-M, Pteridium, Aquilinum, A-Q-U-I-L-I-N-U-M, Aquilinum, yeah. And this one is in a different fern family, the Denstadaceae family. That's a mouthful. D-E-N-N-S-T-A-E-D, Denstade, D-T-I-A-C-E-A-E, Denstadaceae family, Pteridium aquilinum. And this one is a review of one we had last week as well. This is another of our evergreen, sort of elliptic shaped leaves, but slightly toothed on the margin. And we can see the bark of this one, characteristic reddish peeling bark. Not like the western red cedar though, but it peels off to this very smooth texture on the bark of the tree. This is our Pacific madrone, Arbutus menziesii, in the Ericaceae family, like the rhododendron and the blueberries. Arbutus menziesii. And this is the end of the trail. It is a little overgrown down here on the end where it goes out to where the flagpole is at the end of the building, in the little circle drive of the main parking lot. They had the main parking lot blocked off, so they were forcing you to drive around the back of the building, so that's how I marked the trail that way. But if they open it up later on, you can access the trail from this end by the flagpole as well. And so I think I've given you about 20 or maybe a little over 20 things to start studying. Work on those plant names. Practice, practice, practice. We'll have a quiz next week.